There is perhaps no Republican candidate who garners such passion on the hard issues than Ted Cruz. Granted, Donald Trump rules the polls and the roost these days, but when Cruz speaks, he draws a sizable crowd, as he did last week in Des Moines, Iowa, at the Rally for Religious Liberty. A packed house was there to drink in all the candidates' ideas and promises for when he is elected president. We were there for an exclusive one-on-one with the candidate, an interview you will see pieces of all week, only here on The Hardline. Let's begin with what happened earlier that day, when actress and LGBT supporter Ellen Page sought to knock the senator off his game in public, and in the end, she didn't make a dent. We are here at a Rally for Religious Liberty, and oddly enough, on this day, you had quite a little tete-a-tete, if you will, with Ellen Page, the actress, who decided that she was going to come after you and talk about LGBT, which is, again, part of the religious liberty argument that we're in here right now.
Still in a lot of states, LGBT people can be fired for just being gay or for just being trans. That's totally legal. I mean, how do you feel about that? That just doesn't sound very American to me.
You know, at the end of the day, what we should not be doing is persecuting people. So, for example, one of the couples... No, for living according to their faith. So, for example... All right, I'm happy to answer your question, but not to have a back-and-forth debate.
How do you then make people understand that religious liberty is about religion, about people who want to celebrate their religion, but at the same time not making it seem as if you, the GOP, anybody else, is against homosexuals or the LGBT community? How do you do that?
Well, you know, Ed, I don't think it's likely that a whole lot of Hollywood celebrities are going to get behind my campaign anytime soon. So that was not a big surprise that she and I had some disagreements there. You know, I think religious liberty is actually an issue that brings us together. That cuts across racial lines and ethnic lines and socioeconomic lines and party lines. And the purpose of this rally tonight in Iowa is to tell the stories. You know, an awful lot of folks in the media, an awful lot of folks in Hollywood, they dismiss the assault on religious liberty. They say it isn't real. This gathering tonight brings heroes from across the country who have been persecuted for standing up for their faith. And it lets them tell the story. So, for example, Dick and Betty Odegaard. They're here from Iowa, from Grimes, Iowa, a wonderful couple that I've gotten to know quite well. Dick and Betty own an historic Lutheran church. And for a number of years, Dick and Betty hosted weddings in their churches. And they had a business where they do catering and they do flowers and they put on the weddings. Well, a couple of years ago, two men came to them and wanted to have a same-sex wedding. Now, Dick and Betty are both devout Mennonites. And so they very politely, they respectfully said that they couldn't host a homosexual wedding in the church they own because that's inconsistent with their faith. It's inconsistent with biblical teachings. Now, in response, the next day, Dick and Betty were sued. They spent many months in protracted litigation. They ended up having to write a $5,000 check to settle the matter, and they promised to never again host another wedding. Earlier this month, Dick and Betty went out of business. They laid off all of their employees. They were out of business because they stood up and defended their faith. That's one example that this rally is all about.
But what about those who say, again, that the Republican Party and the GOP specifically does not like homosexuals, that you are anti-gay, and they see that as an assault? How do you bring the two of them together to allow religious liberty to exist and the people on the LGBT side to say that you're not against us, you don't hate us?
Well, you know, Ed, I'm a Christian, and Scripture commands Christians to love everybody. This is about whether the government is going to persecute people of faith for standing up to their faith. You know, an analogy that I used with Ms. Page today as we were flipping pork chops, I said, listen, imagine if this were inverted. Imagine if there were a gay florist. Now, I know that's hard to imagine a gay florist, but just go with the hypo for a second. Imagine if two evangelical Christians came to a gay florist and they wanted to get married, and the florist said, you know what, I disagree with your faith. I have problems with your faith. You have no entitlement to force that gay florist to provide flowers at the Christian's wedding. We are a pluralistic nation that tolerates diversity. We don't have any right to force a Jewish rabbi to conduct a Christian wedding ceremony. We don't have any right to force a Muslim imam to conduct a Jewish wedding ceremony. And what we're seeing right now, Ed, is this liberal fascism and intolerance, where their object is to persecute, to punish, to fine any Bible-following Christian or believer that believes in the biblical definition of marriage as the union of one man and one woman. And that is profoundly inconsistent with who we are as Americans.
Can you do that, though, and make the gay community believe that you are not completely anti, that you don't hate them, and that you could still get their vote then? Because let's face it, they believe that you hate them, and that's it.
Well, listen, some activists do, and there's some activists who frankly manifest a hatred and intolerance for Christians, who are persecuting Christians. That is unfortunate. As I said, I think we should love everybody. But I'm a constitutionalist. And the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the very first right protected in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights is religious liberty. We're a nation, Ed, that was founded by men and women fleeing religious persecution and coming to a new land so every one of us could worship God with all of our hearts, minds, and souls. You know, on our website, tedcruz.org, we have a national petition that is up online from people all over this country who want to stand for religious liberty, to protect your religious liberty, my religious liberty, the right of every American to live according to our conscience and our faith. That has been the foundational right upon which this nation was built, and I, for one, am proud to stand with these heroes gathered tonight to defend religious liberty, and I'm glad so many people across the country are going to tedcruz.org, are signing that petition, are standing together as one.
All week long, more of our exclusive one-on-one with GOP candidate Ted Cruz, only right here on the Hardline. Make sure that you join us. Also, don't forget Ted Cruz's book, A Time for Truth, for $9.95 with free shipping, and receive a 6-month trial subscription to Newsmax magazine, plus a whole lot more. Just go to newsmax.com/Ted Cruz for this limited time offer. Stay with us. The fastest 60 minutes of news, the Hardline, continues.